Everdark, Episode 74. Questions You Will Not Ask. Last on Everdark, Daemon uses Armageddon, his unique power which turns vampires back into humans. It is only then that Balthazar realizes why Daemon was worried about using it in front of Julian. For Julian and Christian, who didn't choose to become vampires willingly, could choose to become human again. Balthazar is in a pit of despair as they free Seer, but his despair turns to joy as Christian tells him he wants to remain a vampire after all.
What do you intend to do with us?
Vivica asked. She scrambled to her feet once more as soon as Daemon, Sophia, Balthazar, and Christian disappeared into the crowd. Daemon was no longer there to put a booted foot against her spine and keep her down. Daemon, however, couldn't care less about her questions, her concerns, her fears, her wishes. He only cared about what Julian was thinking, and his fledglings' feelings were beyond him at the moment. Though he could have simply pressed their minds together and know everything that Julian was thinking at that moment, he could not do it. Balthazar was right. I have no faith. What right did I have to upend everything, even if I had to?
What is to be our fate?
Vivica pressed when he did not answer her first question. Everyone had thought that Armageddon was this destructive power, like dust, which allowed him and the other immortals to turn vampires into their pure essence and drain it, like he had done to the vampire on the platform, who dared move to touch his fledgling. But it wasn't. It was the ultimate power to take away the gift of vampirism that the immortals had granted certain humans. Armageddon was not his or the other immortals' word for this power, but the vampire's own word. They had forgotten what it truly was, but they knew that it was utterly devastating. Vivica shivered, her arms wrapped around her frame. No longer was she immune to the cold, and it was slightly chilly in the Everdark, despite the bonfires blazing behind her.
Why won't you answer?
Vivica asked softly. Because only Julian's reaction to them becoming human mattered. Daemon could just look into Julian's mind and know. Julian wasn't blocking him, but it was impossible. He was afraid. He studied Julian's outward reaction. His fledgling wasn't backing away from him. Julian was still snugly in his arms. He could not only feel Julian's breathing heating his skin, hear the steady thump of his heart in Daemon's ears, but be tickled by the light brush of Julian's eyelashes against his throat.
How did you do this? How did you take away everything?
Vivica asked, her voice breaking for the first time. She had chosen to become a vampire. He rifled through her mind. She was 733 years old. 33 of those had been earned when she was mortal. She was now staring ahead at likely only 50 more years, and most of those would be spent infirm if she did not catch a disease or have an accident before then. She was worrying about being on the street, in the sleet, shivering, thinking of all the cars that were whizzing by that could cut her down. She'd have no money, no friends, no family. At 33, with no history, how could she gain employment? That is, if she lives through this moment. And she was still thinking of her mistress, Kitty Yuan of the Helm bloodline. Would Kitty take her in if she did survive? Could she be turned into a vampire again? But no, it wouldn't matter even if she could be turned again. Who would go up against King Daemon? No one. Not when he could turn them all into helpless, hapless humans. Despair like a black cloud settled over her.
What will happen to us?
She whispered. Julian turned towards her. Daemon wanted to clutch him close, but he eased his hold so that Julian could turn in the circle of his arms. His hands slid up to Julian's shoulders. He tightened them, but did not grab.
What do you think should happen to you?
Julian asked. Daemon smiled in pride. Julian left her with no good way out. She had been ready to throw Daemon's associates into a bonfire. She had attempted to attack them. She had cursed his name. Her follower had thought to touch Julian. How did she think this was going to go? What did she think she deserved? Her mouth opened and shut. What was she to say? If she continued to speak of him and the other immortals as the ultimate evil, she was certain she would truly die. If she simply fell to her knees, then her own power, whatever shreds of it were left, would be gone altogether, and she would have nothing if she survived. So what to say? But again, it didn't matter. He was obsessing on her thoughts to avoid Julian's. His fledgling didn't seem upset. He wasn't asking to speak to Daemon in private. He wasn't demanding to be given an explanation for why Daemon hadn't used Armageddon on him in the beginning, while they both thought that Julian would die. Not that it would have worked. Armageddon was only available on full-fledged vampires, something that none of his potential fledglings had survived through. Until Julian. Now, Armageddon could be used on him. A tremor went through Daemon's whole being. He thought he might actually be sick. Things blurred for a moment. He held on to the fact that Julian still seemed the same. No signs of betrayal. I could know for certain if I just looked or simply asked.
It doesn't matter what I think.
Vivica finally said. That is the most intelligent thing she has said.
In some way, you're right.
Julian answered her.
What you think is irrelevant, especially about Daemon. He is king because he is king. I didn't understand that until now. It doesn't matter if you believe in him. It doesn't matter if you kneel before him. It doesn't matter if he has a throne. Everything that makes a vampire isn't from you or me. It's from him. And if he doesn't want us to be vampires anymore, if he takes back that gift, then it's gone. Just gone. Because he rules all of us.
Julian let out a soft huff of laughter.
He is king because he is king.
A tear ran down Vivica's cheek as she began to shake.
It's gone. You're right. It's gone.
She shuddered.
Is it ever coming back?
Julian looked up at Daemon. His expression was unreadable.
That's really not up to me.
At that moment, the gate opened, and through it poured their allies, an ever-growing throng of them. Lizette was at the head of the pack, followed by her pale-haired house members. The raucous members of House Ravenscroft, led by William and Isabel, followed thereafter. Then there were Charlie and Darcy, and a gaggle of mirror vampires who kept sliding from form to form, reflecting the Order fashions, though not their faces. He saw the change in their eyes, as they realized that they faced no Order berserkers, but instead mere humans. Predators to prey in a moment. Lizette was first to greet him. She curtsied before him.
I see we are hardly needed, unless it is to clean all this up.
She gestured to the former vampires with a hint of fang showing.
Armageddon is fearsome, my king. I thought it would be something destructive, but this is so much worse than that.
Do not look at me with pity, you Callie dog.
Vivica snapped. Lizette let out a girlish laugh.
Are you going to let them live, my king, and age away? That might be rather a waste. I could do much with this many souls for you. I could perform many wonders.
No! Daemon, no, don't. That's not...
Julian looked at her with horror.
You've seen how the dead can trouble the living, Julian. None here are worth your defense. They would have slaughtered you, Christian, everyone. They would have feasted on the fountains of your blood. They should be punished.
Julian went pale.
I just...
Lizette smiled at him.
You have a good heart. I am glad our king can protect you from the darkness in others.
He doesn't need to protect me.
I would not have your faith and kindness tainted even a bit.
Lizette continued.
I'm not a child.
Julian looked affronted.
I'm not naive.
He glanced at Daemon.
I'm not. I just don't want to take life unnecessarily, or have people's souls used for terrible things.
That is reasonable to me.
Arceus murmured.
People are very superstitious about the Callie and what we do, but I can assure you that our gift is no more objectionable than the ability to read and control minds.
She gave Arceus a smile that did not quite meet her eyes.
Though now I am quite grateful to be on your side, it was Balthazar who changed my mind on the subject. How is that different from what I would do with a soul?
We can have a philosophical debate about that later.
Arceus said dryly. All bloodlines have grace, in my view. Daemon replied to both of them. Lisette curtsied.
We are so used to prejudice.
As are we.
Arceus replied with narrowed eyes.
How many times have the members of the Iros bloodline been exiled? Far more than Callie.
And this should make you allies. Daemon interrupted what was an old fight. You have both been isolated from the other bloodlines. You should take comfort in one another. Arceus crossed his arms over his chest. Lisette hummed a little under her breath.
Christian should be a bridge between you guys.
Julian said.
A speaker of the dead in one house that can only be trained by another. You must be connected in some way.
Were Callie and Iros close?
Lisette asked. Iros was able to read Callie, know what they needed, but Iros only did so when
it amused him, I'm sure.
Lisette guessed.
You sound hurt by that, but you claim not to care at the same time.
Arceus murmured with a roll of his eyes.
You can make people like you if you're an Iros. We cannot do the same.
She sniffed. Julian's head had been moving between them like he was watching a tennis match. His eyebrows rose with every word.
Guys, we're all allies. We have plenty of enemies out there, without looking to make more between us.
Julian said. He then dipped his head towards Vivica.
We have them here.
Lisette barred her fangs at Vivica.
Yes, you are quite right. There are far more worthy foes here. You should make some of these people examples now, my king.
Vivica's chin lifted.
Are we to be hunted down like...
Like the pitiful creatures you are for challenging King Daemon.
Arceus finished for her. His expression was grave.
What can we do for you, King Daemon, with these people?
Fiona stepped up.
There are blood slaves here, and cells. I would request, King Daemon, that those people be returned to their homes, and these here be placed within those cells until you determine what should be done with them.
Perhaps some will be salvageable.
Lisette said with a sniff. She yanked Vivica to her.
But most will not be.
Daemon nodded. Let it be done.
Come, Arceus, help me.
But Daemon shook his head. I need him for something else. Have the other houses help you. Lisette, follow Fiona's lead. Charlie? Yes, my king. Charlie's gaze snapped onto him. He had been looking at everything and everyone with a sense of amazement. But it was no greater than when Charlie faced him. He saw his own visage appear on Charlie's face, then meld into his usual foppish one.
If you want to support this podcast and get the unedited episodes, we actually have something better than a Patreon. I have my own serial subscription website, wraithrain.com. It's an old-fashioned paywall site, just like Netflix or Crunchyroll. With a membership, you do get the uncut versions of Everdark with no intros, outros, or edited parts. Just the chapters as they were meant to be heard, before we've had to make it all Disney safe. You'll also get the few sexy audio chapters of Empire of Stars and Dragon's Reign that I can't put up on YouTube or Spotify. If all you want is the audio chapters, then we can just stop there. But if you want to know what else you get as a Wraith Reign member, I'll tell you more after the chapter concludes.
He's talking to you, Charlie.
Darcy enthused. Charlie gave her a dry look. I am aware, Darcy. I can hear.
Yes, but...
Darcy clapped her hands.
Isn't it wonderful that he's speaking to you of all people?
Charlie scowled. Of course he's speaking to me. I'm the head of my house and friends with Balthazar.
Friends with Iros?
Darcy corrected. Yes, well, yes, of course. But, King Daemon, what can I do? Charlie asked. Help Fiona. Daemon answered dryly. Of course. Do you want us to rough them up? Charlie gestured towards the form of vampires. There is no need to lower ourselves, is there? Daemon asked him. Oh, no, they are just... He broke into a grin. Human, after all. They break. He sobered and opened his mouth to say something, but then stopped.
What is it?
Julian asked. Daemon's heart thudded heavily in his chest at the sound of Julian's voice. How he loved hearing it. How he relished Julian assisting him. His fledgling had a softer touch. He was still mortal in his thinking, closer to his subjects than he was. There were people from my house that I had to send here. I know that if they were against you, that they deserve their fate, but Charlie broke off, his forehead furrowing.
You're thinking of Jeremy.
Darcy said. The smile that had been dancing on her lips fell away. Charlie nodded. Is there any way? I mean, they are human now. Can they be turned again? Would you allow it? It depends, Daemon answered. We shall see. Their minds will have to be scanned. Iros will know those who can be saved and those who we will have to deal with in other ways. Oh, yes. Balthazar is so very good at that. Charlie beamed. And there must be punishment for all, Daemon said simply. Charlie's beam dimmed. Julian looked up at him with a frown. Daemon remained firm. He tightened his grip on Julian's shoulder. They would have harmed you. They would have harmed our friends. Daemon reminded his fledgling gently. Still, you ask nothing for yourself, Julian. No questions, no concerns.
I understand,
Julian said, but still looked unhappy. It will be an individual process. Daemon assured them both. Now clear the square.
What of the creatures?
Arceus asked. The creatures that he had summoned to support his reign moved languidly about the crowd. They sniffed the air. They looked up at the twin moons. They stared at the spire and the light that shone from its tip. Leave them be. They will harm no one, Daemon stated. They will go back to their homes in time, though many will remain near as long as I am here.
Of course.
Arceus bowed his head. You must make this place sacred once more, Arceus. It will be a beacon for those who wish to come see me, Daemon explained. Arceus nodded.
Yes, I can. I must speak with Daemon.
His lips pressed together.
He will know where the other long-term members of the Order went.
Will they want to know Daemon?
Julian asked, looking incredulous. After what he had seen here, why would he trust anyone in the Order?
Can they be trusted?
There will be those who doubt, but once they meet the king, their minds will be opened.
I can almost hear Balthazar snarking about how that is too positive an attitude.
Balthazar's extreme gift has meant that he has heard the darkness in people's hearts far more than most. He forgets that as much as people can fall to the depths, they can rise to great heights.
I hope you are right,
Fiona said, and she seemed to mean it. She then gathered Lizette, Charlie, and Darcy. They all spread out, talking to the other vampires. Everyone was handled gingerly, which he saw Julian appreciating. Come, Arceus, let us go to the spire. I wish to show Julian the pinnacle, and you can find Daemon to ask him the questions you need answered, Daemon said. Arceus inclined his head, and then the three of them headed towards the spire. Daemon wanted some time alone with his fledgling. He had to know what Julian was thinking away from everyone. He had to know if Julian was even considering asking him to use Armageddon on him.
You managed to end this without 1 second death,
Arceus said, a touch of awe in his voice.
It is so much more, and, to be honest, very unexpected than I ever thought.
You thought there would be a battle? Daemon guessed. Arceus nodded.
A great one. The Order are trained to be expert fighters. Not that these new confessors would be anything like the ones of old, but still, not a drop of blood spilled.
Yeah, I admit, I thought you were worried about showing me some kind of violent side to yourself.
Julian agreed.
You were so intent on me not coming to this, but there was no danger at all.
Daemon's gaze jerked to his fledgling. His mouth was dry as dust. No, there was not. Julian gave him a wry smile.
You aren't totally overprotective, but I just thought you wouldn't want me near a battle.
There was never any battle planned, Daemon admitted. There is no need to battle my people. You convinced me, Julian, that the king I wish to be is one that preserves as many of the vampires as I can. They have been hurt and misled. At that moment, the doors to the spire opened, and Daemon strode out. His expression was taut, which meant that he was deeply alarmed, since he rarely showed any emotion. He stopped before Daemon and bowed with remarkable grace, not to mention no hesitation. It was interesting, and it could be useful.
My king, Seer is released, but she is in desperate need to feed.
Daemon explained.
We have plenty of options for her here.
Arceus responded.
She will need many, and they might not survive it.
Caemon said carefully.
Why?
Julian's eyes were huge. You starved her, did you not, Caemon? Daemon asked, his voice clipped.
Yes, but not just me. She's been without a full feeding for quite some time.
Caemon said, not dodging the answer, which was 1 point in his favor, even though there were 1,000,000 against him.
She fears if she is exposed to so much blood, she will lose herself.
Yes, she will. Even one human in her presence may set her off. Daemon grimaced. None may be down there when she feeds.
Wait, you mean you'll pick someone, a bunch of someones that she could kill?
Julian was pale as milk. He took hold of Julian's biceps. I will choose only those who cannot be reached, those that would hurt our friends and allies. You trust me on this?
I trust you with everything.
Julian admitted.
I trust you completely. Whatever you need to do.
Daemon's mouth went dry again. Julian.
Do what you need. I'll be here.
Julian said, will you always be here? The question slipped out before he could help it. Julian's head tilted to the side.
Of course. Where else would I be?
Daemon could not help but fear that Julian had not thought this through, that it had not yet occurred to him what Armageddon could do for him. Or he did know, but it meant nothing, because he wished to stay, but he could not bear to allow himself to know which it was.
I will go get the others with her.
Caemon said, no need. Daemon's mind connected with those in the room below the spire. Seer's mind seized onto his. His eyelids closed as he held her close to him. The suffering she had experienced was great, too great. His fingernails cut into his own palms. He forced himself to release them.
It was the only way to ensure you could come back to us, my king,
She said, I should never have left. He answered her.
You could not stay. Your heart would have turned to dust.
She answered.
And what you will build now will be greater than anything before. Any amount of suffering is worth what will come.
You intrigue me, Seer. A smile crossed his lips.
That is the first true smile you've had since you came here. Not that I expect you to be joyous to find those arranged against you, but oh, you and Eros, such a pair.
She laughed. What do you mean? He asked her.
Take your fledgling to the top of my spire and ask him the questions you dare not.
I do not know.
You are both love-sick fools. It is rather adorable. Now, please send me those that you would have gone from this plane.
She said, It shall be done. You shall be restored, Seer. Send the others away. It would be disturbing for Christian especially to see your thirst, he said.
Of course, I would not have anyone see me like this in any event. I rule the thirst. The thirst does not rule me. Until it does.
She answered faintly. All will be well, he told her, and he hoped it was true. But he had seen vampires who had been starved too long, who could never control themselves again. Daemon's mind swept outwards to all of the people in Solace. He identified 5 former vampires that his gifts told him would never be on his side. They would actively work against him. They would try to hurt those he cared for and cared for him. He touched their minds, and they became stiff. They all turned as one and headed towards the spire. He sent a word to all the others to let them go.
That's them. The ones you've chosen. They're moving like zombies,
Julian remarked, as he took in the 5 figures that went to the spire's doors and passed through them without hesitation. Yes, they will feel and know nothing of what comes, Daemon said.
You are kinder to them than they would have been to any of us.
Caemon remarked. Then his eyes narrowed as he took in Julian.
But I understand that you need not lean into our more predatory natures. Not now, not when. Well, I understand.
You certainly wish me to believe you do, Daemon thought, but you also consider this Julian's weakness. Come, Julian, let us go up to the top of the spire. Daemon put a hand on his fledgling's lower back and led him towards the stars. Join us next time for episode 75, A Million Little Pieces.
I write a lot of stories. Far more than Dragon's Reign and Everdark. Everdark is just one of my gay, romantic, epic-length adventures. Since 2010, I've written long gay romance web novels with hot heroes falling in love with each other, whether it's honorable elven warriors, fierce dragon shifters, sensual mermen, fallen angels and demons, and reincarnated immortal vampires. When you join, you can read all of these on my serial membership site. The completed stories are there in full for you to read as fast as you want, and the ongoing stories get 3 chapters every week, so I can torture you with cliffhangers. I mean, entertain you, not torture. Cat, who wrote this script? But don't worry, you can tell me exactly what you think of that in the comments at the end of every chapter. As a member, you can be in my own personal peanut gallery. If this sounds interesting to you, try us out for a month. The link to sign up is in the notes.
The Everdark podcast by X Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thelis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.